Moffat, why you give me so many feels? Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of Discovering Doctor Who. I am getting good at that! Today's episode is, well, it's actually the 55th episode of Discovering Doctor Who, and it's going to be over Vincent and the Doctor. And I honestly don't know, this might be a very short episode, but for all the right reasons. Well, let's get right into my favorite parts of this episode. The first of which is Vincent van Gogh, or apparently Vincent van Gogh, or however it's actually pronounced. I never actually heard the way it was pronounced on the show until I watched this episode. I've always heard it Vincent van Gogh, but I'll try to say it Goff, but I'll probably just mess it up. But anyway, the guy that portrayed him did an amazing job. I mean, visually, I don't think they could have picked anyone better. Like, honestly, and they've had some really good historical figures portrayed, or portrayed very well on this show in the past, but visually, this had to be the most accurate depiction I've seen so far. I mean, the guy is basically a reincarnation of Vincent van Gogh, and it just, the character throughout, getting to experience all the dynamics to his personality, to his mindset, the way he sees the world, or at least, you know, as portrayed in the show, is just absolutely phenomenal. I cannot say enough good things about the character of Vincent van Gogh. It was just excellently done, excellently written. It's just really, really good. And also the way that, you know, of course, the Doctor and Amy play off of Vincent throughout the episode is just a lot of fun and really well done. Now, my second favorite part of this episode is the Doctor's protectiveness, obviously of Amy, because, well, Amy doesn't remember Rory existing. And so apparently he's been taking her on a lot of trips or to a lot of different places that apparently is somewhere in between this episode and the previous one. I don't know if maybe it takes place in a book or a novel or whatever, but or an audio drama. But yeah, it's like he's been taking her to all these places to be very kind to her, be very nice to her. And even she is kind of curious why he's doing all of these things. So, and when Vincent is able to see that she's experienced loss, I don't know if he supposedly has some sort of ESP to go along with his ability to see the colors of the world, but yeah, it's just the way the Doctor shows that protectiveness and how he's like, when Vincent starts saying those things, he starts trying to cut Vincent off. Yeah, I really like that, and it was I don't know that being protective is a different side of the Doctor necessarily, but just the way, again, it was portrayed in this episode, I enjoyed how they did that. Now, my third favorite part of this episode has to do with Amy not being the marrying type, or not the marrying type. And, you know, obviously, she had that personality, she had, you know, a mindset similar to that when Rory existed. But now that, you know, he's essentially not been a part of her history at all, because he never existed, I don't know, it was kind of easier to enjoy her character acting that way, I guess, or being more herself, being able to flirt and being able to do this and that without really, you know, having that, and I apologize if this is like sort of a typical guy mindset, or whatever, but, you know, just without feeling like, you know, is she kind of cheating on him? Because, and actually that brings to mind, I just thought of this, when she kind of, you know, jumped on the Doctor previously while she was engaged to Rory, did that ever occur? Or if it did, does she remember that occurring? And if it did occur, did the Doctor tell her about Rory? I don't know. I'd be curious to see how that scene supposedly played out with Rory never existing. That's interesting. I actually, like I said, I hadn't thought of that until just this second. But anyway, moving on. The fourth favorite part of this episode for me was the comedy. And for an episode that admittedly had some really deep, kind of dark scenes, I mean, the comedy was, it was just so well written. You know, there was the physical comedy with the Doctor fighting the invisible, I was going to say army, the invisible enemy. The lines exchanged back and forth between Vincent and Amy and the Doctor. It was just really well done, and again, really well written. And of course, no matter how well written something is, if you don't have the right people doing it, it just won't come off right. And all three of them just, they did an excellent job, basically, of getting the comedy across, in my opinion. Now, my fifth and final favorite part of this episode was the ending. Oh my goodness, that ending was just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. It was beautiful. It was superbly acted. Well, I'll comment on the music here in a little bit, but just everything about the last, I guess, 5 minutes of this episode was just superb. And it really hit me hard. I'm sure it did other people too, but oh my goodness, just, I can't even put it into words. Those last 5 minutes of this episode were probably the best of any scene that has appeared on this show so far, at least for me, from my perspective. It was just amazing. But moving on, as far as annoyances with this episode goes, and maybe this is seeming kind of like I'm playing favorites or whatever, but it was really hard to find negatives with this one. So the one annoyance that I did pick out is probably the biggest nitpick possible. And it was that the monster was kind of meh. Now the design, you know, despite what you may think about the computer graphics, the design was very interesting, very different. And then what we end up finding out that it was actually just afraid the whole time. You know, that was pretty shocking in my opinion. But I don't know, it's just, the monster kind of felt like an afterthought to this episode, and in my opinion, appropriately so. The story here was the Doctor, Amy, and Vincent. Not in that particular order, obviously. But, yeah, if I had any annoyances with this episode, it would be that one. Well, actually, no, I take that back. There might be a second one, and this is even more nitpicky. But the song that played during the scene where Vincent gets to see his art in a museum. And please don't hit thumbs down just because of that, because I have more to say about that. The reason why it's just the slightest bit of an annoyance is because it just didn't feel atypical of a Doctor Who episode. It felt sort of out of place because pretty much all the music that has appeared on the show before, if not something by Murray Gold, was sort of a cover or a reworking of an existing piece, or sort of a period piece, I guess you would say, or period music, whatever. But then when it comes to this song, it was just, it reminded me of a lot of American TV, like Criminal Minds. There's a lot of episodes that right at the end there'll be a big dramatic moment, and then this popular music will start playing. Or Scrubs. Scrubs was really infamous for doing that, and I absolutely love the show Scrubs. It just felt out of place. Now that being said, the song of the episode was Chances by the band Athlete, which is that song. And again, although it felt a bit out of place, I will never be able to hear that song again without instantly getting this entire scene, this entire last 5 minutes of the episode in my head. And I mean, just the emotions that come from that segment. It'll be a little bit debilitating. I honestly hope I don't hear it while I'm driving, because that will be a very teary experience. But yeah, just if you haven't heard that song before, or if you don't, for some reason, don't remember what I'm talking about link in the annotation right here, and also down in the description below. Go listen to that song. It's so beautiful, and just, while out of place, just so perfect, so absolutely perfect for that segment. Now, moving on from my high praise there, it's time for my quote of the episode. And honestly, this one, this one is definitely the part of those last 5 minutes that probably hit me the most, because I just kept going back over and over what the doctor says over and over in my mind. And the quote is this. Oh, well, it's an exchange between Amy and then the doctor. "We didn't make a difference at all. I wouldn't say that. The way I see it, every life is a pile of good things and bad things. The good things don't always soften the bad things, but vice versa. The bad things don't necessarily spoil the good things and make them unimportant." Now, it's not the most beautifully written dialogue. It's not even kind of poetic, really, but it's true. And I'm not gonna venture on that too long, otherwise I might start rambling much more than I usually do. But just such a good quote, such a good line, and so absolutely very, very true. Alright, now it should come as no surprise whatsoever, but as far as my overall thoughts on this episode, I absolutely loved it. Other than maybe just the creature in the episode, it's so hard to come up with negatives for this one, honestly. Like I said, just everything was the tiniest little nitpicks that I could possibly think of. It was just so good. Now, if any of you don't like this episode for some reason, I would really like to hear why. I would like to know what about the episode didn't intrigue you, especially. Because I honestly just can't see it. Either that or the nitpicks that I had might have been, you know, bigger for you. But, yeah, this is such a good episode. I'm really ready to move on and get into the next episode, which will be The Lodger. And no questions, no big overall thoughts moving forward for this episode, but I did write something down here, and I'll end with that. And I guess you could call it a question. If you have depression or any other mental and emotional problems, will you get help? If someone you love has depression or any other mental and emotional problems, will you do your best to help them? If you or anyone you love needs help, if you're in the US, you can go here, provide information down below. If you're outside the US, I'll try and provide some links as well. Until next time, everyone, I'm Papa Ken. Alonzi.